Everybody should be arriving. Great to see so many faces coming in. As you come in, it would be really great if you could change your Zoom name so we can know who we're talking to. And you can do that by just right-clicking the image of your face, and you'll have the option to put your name in if you haven't already. I'm Lorna, I'm the marketing manager at Semble, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro to today's session before handing over to the funding doctor, Corinna, who is waving at you all. And Corinna will run this third and final session in our workshop series on funding. Before we get going, for those of you who don't know, Semble is a social enterprise, and we run community action campaigns that connect businesses with community groups to funnel plenty of funding and volunteers into local projects. If you want to be the first to know about the funding opportunities around from ourselves and other organisations in this sector, you can sign up to Semble's mailing list at semble.org/join. I will just put a little link to that into the chat for everybody to see. And you can also be featured on our website, which is a platform that celebrates community organisations and allows you to upload events, to write blogs, to share your story. And you can do that at the link that I am about to share. So we've been running a series of workshops since the end of March, and they've covered everything from engaging your community online to managing volunteers and teams. And they've been a really valuable source for learning and sharing and connecting with other community groups in what's been quite a disconnected time for many of us. And some of us have been to many workshops, others only one or two. Some of us have used Zoom every day for the past 6 months, and others are quite new to it. So I'm just going to go over a couple of Zoom functions and share some of our house rules to make sure that we're all really comfortable in this space today. So we always ask that as many people as possible turn their cameras on. The icon in the bottom of your screen will allow you to start your video or stop your video. And we will ask you to have your microphone off. It should be set automatically to off already, just to make sure that we can really concentrate on whoever is leading the session and their voice. So that we can communicate through the session, we encourage everyone to use the chat box. You can access that also at the bottom of the screen. If you can't see it in your bottom bar, you can press more, where you get the ... at the bottom, and you can jump into the chat, ask any questions. We'll be responding to anything as questions come up, and saving the really juicy ones for the end for a Q&A towards the finish of the session. We are recording the session today, and we will send the recording as well as a copy of the slideshow that Corinna will share to everybody here and anyone who was on the waiting list and didn't manage to make it into today's session as well. If you aren't comfortable appearing in that recording, do turn your cameras off, and feel free to only interact through the chat if that's what you're comfortable with. But do, if you feel comfortable, leave your cameras on, because it really does help to create a space that feels more connected and more communal. Now, today's session, as I said, is the third workshop in a 3-part series that Corinna, otherwise known as the funding doctor, has run for us here at Semble. And the first session in the series covered how to attract funding. We then moved on to all about where to access funding and the different funding streams available. Today's session is going to cover how to build a sustainable funding strategy and how to budget and economise for success. Today, we're going to kick off with a bit of a recap of the first 2 sessions on how to attract funding and where to access it. And then we're going to have a bit of an introductory piece to a couple of activities that we're going to be running. It's going to be a very interactive session today. And we're going to be supported in that by Corinna, who some of you will know well by now from the previous sessions we've run, and the all-important support from the Assemble team. So we have Perrine and Josie and Kia and Dan and myself, who everybody will get to know a bit better later on in the session. Now, to get into the mood of the interactive vibe we're going to be working with today, I'm going to pull up a whiteboard. Bear with me one moment. I'm going to share this whiteboard. You should all be able to see on your screen a whiteboard. I'm getting a thumbs up, that's good. Now you can draw and comment on this whiteboard. You can do that by simply selecting the view button, view options at the top of your screen. And then when you drop down, you should be able to see annotate or annotation tools. If you select that, you'll have the opportunity to text, draw, stamp, erase, do bits and pieces. Do jump in there and draw on the board, and everyone will be able to see that. It would be great if you could doodle or do a little bit of text about some of your top takeaways from, oh, yeah, nice, I like it. If we can add next to the stars and the sunshine, some of the top takeaways from the first two sessions, if you were at those sessions, it'd be great to see some of what you've got from previous sessions with the wonderful funding doctor. I am going to try and add something myself here. There we go. Hope everyone can see that. A little bit hidden by the beautiful smiley face behind. Now, while you are having fun on there, I hope everyone can see the whiteboard rather than the rest of my messy screen. While you're having fun on there, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Corinna's funding expertise. So Corinna has helped many community projects, social enterprises and community businesses to find funding and sustainably access that funding. She's delivered workshops for us here at Assemble and also for the Village SOS, Big Lunch Extras, for Eden Communities, for voluntary sector training and others. She's worked for the Big Lottery Fund, for EU Rural Development Funding, and is an advisor for the Plunkett Foundation and the Hive, among other organisations. She also has personal experience of setting up community projects and small enterprises. Now, we're all very lucky to have Corinna sharing her knowledge on funding strategies with us here today. And it's great to see that there has been some positive feedback from previous sessions with the wide range of income streams, more funding. The more funding you get, the more fundable you are. There you go, someone's quoting you, Corinna. Great to see these coming through, the great tips and information that have been shared in previous sessions. So I am going to save that lovely little whiteboard that we've created, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can come back together. And before I hand over to Corinna, I'm just going to remind everybody that if you do have questions as we go through, do use the chat box to ask those, and the team will monitor that and respond where we can, and save any of those really juicy bits for the end of the session when we'll be having a final Q&A. So over to Corinna.
Thank you, Luna, and thank you for the lovely Assemble team for having me again. I'm just going to share my screen with you. For that, I'm just going to just switch my video off just for 1 second, so just bear with me for 1 minute. Sorry, I'm gonna be quiet as well. Need to concentrate. Even though I've done it a few times, it's still, can you all see this? There's a first slide now? Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just come back into video. Fantastic. So I'm ready to go. So welcome back to you all, you positive community activists. And it's lovely to see that some of you have been in the previous workshops and that you've taken something useful away already. So that's brilliant. So for those of you who are new and joining us just for today, a very warm welcome to you too, as the sun is out again. My name is Corinna Hartwig, and I'm also known as the Funding Doctor, and I kind of brought you my lovely Funding Doctor coat again. Today, I want to share with you a bit more of my experience as both a volunteer for a successful community project that raised over £95,000, but also in my roles on the funder side that Lorna quite kindly told you about earlier. We're going to look at how to budget on a shoestring and develop a simple sustainable funding strategy that allows you to plan better today, because I want to kind of share that experience with you, because if I pulled off a successful community project, you too can do it. So what I'd like to do today, though, is also a very brief, giving you a very brief overview of what I'm going to cover. I'm going to recap from the previous workshops, just to kind of set the tone and to refresh everybody's learning, which is now a little while ago. Then I'm going to show you how to create a budget, and I'm going to talk about the 3B rule, and you'll find out more about that in a minute. And then also how to build a simple but sustainable funding strategy that is so important. We're going to do today a little bit differently. We really want to give you quite a bit of time in the breakout rooms to interact with each other and to actually practice some of those tools. So we have prepared a few activities for you in the breakout sessions, and they will take up a good part of today. After those ones, we will come back together in the main Zoom room to share what we experienced in the breakout sessions, how we work together, and then we will have time for a final Q&A. So I hope that's all okay. Obviously, I will try to answer any questions at the end of the session today. But if you have any questions all along, please just put them in the chat, and we will look at them and I will try to answer them. Okay, are you ready? Let's do a quick recap from the previous workshops. We'll do it as quickly as possible because we covered a lot. In our previous workshops, we established that we, the community groups and the funders, have three important drivers in common. Do good, look good, and feel good. When you do good in your community, it makes you feel good. This good feeling also puts a smile on our faces, which in turn makes us look good. These three motivators are what you and the funder have in common, and that is so powerful. We also discussed that funders have areas of need for which they provide funding. These are broadly 9 different strategic areas, and I will just give you the header for them. The first one is obviously still COVID. The second one is food action. The third, environment, climate, green spaces, waste and resources. The fourth is health and well-being. The fifth is economy, is kind of sustaining jobs, employment. The sixth is the digital divide. And some of them I have represented I have tried to represent in some of the images on the screen. The seventh is equality, rights and social cohesion. The eighth is education and training. And the ninth is art and culture. And obviously the kind of latter ones are not in a particular order, but obviously COVID, food, climate, and equality and rights are at the moment right at the front of all those topics. So as you can see, you and the funder have identified really the same areas to do good. And you know now that if you want funding, your job is to find the right funder that has the same area of interest as you. Further, we kind of discussed how strategies at different levels interact with your project that sits at the center of your community. But we also discovered that the funders, often too far away from the front line, need you to help them to do good at grassroots level. This again is powerful, and your job is to tell the funder how your project helps alleviate hardship and plays an important role in bringing on the change that is necessary. Then I introduced you to a very useful tool, the outcome pyramid, to break down all the different parts of your project that together make up a very strong case for funding. We also discovered that most funders found outcomes, not the activities. So the outcome is the positive changes that your project brings about. You will also need to make sure that your project outcomes are aligned with those of your chosen funder. These really need to match, or you have chosen the wrong funder. Still, we discovered another kind of tool, and I just want to kind of rattle again my real life jam jar that just represents really the sustainable income spectrum. And I told you how useful the jam jar has been for our project that I was involved in. It's now my favorite analogy for a successful funding strategy. Without the funding mix, our project would have never been realized. In the last workshop, I took you onto a deep dive into the different income streams, but here's just a very brief reminder. There are 4 main traditional pillars in the sustainable income spectrum. These 4 pillars cover the main types of fundraising, from donations and grants, which require you to ask for money, to contracts and sales, which require you to earn money. Rule number 1, don't depend on just one income stream. In addition to the 4 traditional income streams, there are 3 more. Crowdfunding, which can be a great way to raise awareness of our community projects while you raise money. Loans are particularly useful for funding innovation costs or buying an asset for the community. And shares you could access if your legal model of your community organization allows it, and if it feels right for your organization, you could set up a community share offer. But we also discussed that communication and marketing, which is the arrow that goes from asking to earning underneath the 4 traditional pillars, that communication and marketing is influenced by which income streams you choose as part of your funding strategy. So the top tips across all income streams is also embrace digital. It's not going to go away. Finally, we looked at the funding environment. So what's the wider backdrop in which we all operate? At the top is obviously COVID, and I had to kind of update now for the 3rd time the official poster. A lot of changes going on, in the funding environment. But COVID looks to stay for us much longer than anticipated. And funders are still adapting to this too. So keep checking all free funding search tools that I mentioned in previous workshops and check for updates. The need, which is the middle photo at the top, we all know that the need is huge, and with the UK officially in recession, it will keep on growing, and we hear it on the news daily. Thirdly, the digital shift. Today in the sector, we're doing things digitally that we didn't think possible just a few months ago. Rallying around, coordinating, giving support whilst being physically apart, working remotely but in a team, embracing remote learning through webinars like this one, organizing virtual pub quizzes and other digital fundraisers, collecting cashless donations, and communicating even more via social media, email, and other electronic means. In addition, I need to say, unfortunately, the space is crowded and funding is now even more competitive. So perhaps it's time for you to think about getting together to truly assemble with another similar group or organization. Pool your energy and join resources and look for funding together so that you can do more together. Together here with Semble, we want to invite you to continue to be creative and resourceful, because we know that's what you're really good at. And you have just proven it in the last few months. And you can do it again, because you're not alone. The Semble team and I are here to support you with that. In the previous workshops, we also signposted you to further help. If you missed that, please go on the Semble website. If you missed any of the previous workshops, you can replay them, rewatch them there, and you also have access to all the resources on there. So, phew, this was a summary of the past 2 workshops, and that's basically over 3 hours worth of workshop. So, but I feel the recap is valuable, even though it was just a whistle-stop tour. But I would like to move on to today's topic now, because at the end of the day, that's why you've come on this afternoon. And it's beautiful out there, so we certainly don't want to keep you longer than we have to here. So, first up then, writing a budget. The first thing you will need to do is to brainstorm as a team to find out what you will need to pull off your project. Make sure you include anything and everything. Go wild, be creative, be daring in this first step. It's a good idea to use a virtual whiteboard or a collaborative tool such as Jamboard for this. If you can come together in person, then use flip chart paper and pens. Fuel your creativity with tea and coffee and biscuits, and allow for everyone to chip in. A central checklist for costs can include staff time or training that includes volunteer training. Obviously in the past there was travel, but now it might be your broadband, or you're signing up to some applications that you can kind of communicate in the virtual world. In the past it was venues, now it's still probably more equipment and probably some venues at the moment as they're open. Marketing, printing, and that includes your kind of online marketing as well, advertising, recruitment, and other resources, stationery, etc. So these are just a few examples. In the next step, you will group your different costs. This is because many funders will ask you to separate the capital costs from the revenue costs. So it is important to recognize the difference between them. Capital costs are normally thought as one-off bigger costs that are associated with your project, such as equipment purchases and setting up costs. So that could be investing in a building, that could be a van, a car, specialist equipment, and big photocopiers, big kind of printers. Kind of the normal laptops and printers are not considered as capital costs anymore because they don't last so long. Revenue costs are the running costs of your projects, and these will include wages, national insurance, pension contributions, recruitment costs, including the costs for recruiting volunteers, training costs, rent rates, heat, light, postage, telephone charge, maintenance, repairs, renewals, cleaning, travel insurance, broadband, specific project costs, printing and promotional materials, hiring of specialist support, such as a designer for your website, for example, project evaluation costs, but also consumables like paper, print cartridges, pen, support costs, and obviously now PPE, cleaning materials, screens, and yet more extra cleaning and PPE. So, but make sure you're using digital tools such as Google Sheets or Excel to share with your team. And I've just put on there a couple of examples on how you can kind of capture a budget on the slide. Once you have a comprehensive list of all the costs relating to your project, it's time to get serious and think about where the funding could come from for it all. Because after all, you are aiming high. The quickest ever funding tool you will ever come across is this tool, the red pen. Let me show you why it is the quickest tool ever for you for funding. Is as simple as that. once you have your ideal world shopping list, go over it with your red pen and cross out all the luxuries in the first step. But think carefully, can I beg? Can I borrow or can I barter? Once you have taken out all the luxuries, go over your list again. This time you will cross out all the nice to haves. Oh, I know this is really hard. But again, think, which one can you beg for, barter or borrow? And anything you get in kind will still go into your donations income stream as in kind, okay, including your volunteering time. So for example, if you have costs for tech equipment on your list, see if you can get by using maybe cheaper specs, or see if you can borrow the equipment, or see if you can hire it maybe from the Library of Things, or from a company maybe in return for some services that you will provide for them. So use the red pen all the time. You will have to, as you will need to plan on a shoestring always. It will save you a lot of time and money. The red pen is really your fastest fundraising tool, believe me. And don't worry, we'll practice the budgeting and the 3B rule in the breakout session very shortly. Now I want to move on very quickly, because I kind of whittled you through the cost breakdown. I want to move you on to how much funding you're looking for, and looking at a simple fundraising strategy, but a really simple one. One of the realities full of voluntary and community sector organizations is that there are nearly always more things that you want to do, that there is money and resources to do them. The other reality is that it is difficult. Oops, sorry, I've clicked here by mistake. Let me go back. So the other reality is that it is very difficult to develop sustainable funding. This means that voluntary and community groups can spend a lot of time trying to find the replacement money to continue their project, and some of you will probably be in that scenario. It is also important to think about ensuring a sustainable income stream by having income for the short term and the long term. One way of trying to tackle this problem is for you to develop a long-term view by developing a funding strategy. So here is an example of St. Clair's Hospice in Essex, which is the donut on the left. And I have translated the chart into the funding strategy using the sustainable income spectrum. So we can actually discover that half of the income from St. Clair's Hospice in Essex, half of their income is coming from donations, and a whopping one third comes from contracts, and some other income is generated from sales and other smaller streams. It's quite clear that St. Clair's Hospital is not relying on grant income at all. So let's take a look at a different funding strategy. Here is again a donut, and this time it's the funding strategy kind of looking back from groundworks. You can see that they have an income from grants from the European Union, from National Lottery, but also donations, but also income from the private sector and from contracts. But over half of their total income is a really good funding mix. So that's the side to your left, if you like, of the donut. And to the right of the donut, the kind of green and blue area, you can see that they are very reliant of generating income from local and national government. So they have a really good funding mix, but obviously if the green stream breaks off, then they might be a little bit in a pickle. So you can see how important it is for them to really make sure that they're establishing strong relationships, keep that communication and that marketing up, that they're getting that revenue coming in. So it is really important that you sit down and think about your funding strategy. And in the background of this slide, I put a little example of a fundraising strategy summary together for you, which we will share after the webinar. So it's important that you sit down as a team and discuss which income streams you would like to explore and think will provide you with the income you will need. You can also give each income stream a weight in form of a percentage. If you plan for it, you can fundraise with much greater focus, and you are less likely to be sidetracked by other funding streams or project ideas that currently don't fit into your plan. You can also have a look at the Institute for Fundraising on YouTube. They have a series of videos called the 5-Minute Fundraiser, and they're really, really helpful. There is a little 5-minute video on there on fundraising strategy, but also how to schedule and a bit about communications as well. So please go and have a look. This brings me to the end of my slides for now, because we want to, as I said earlier, really get you to practice now also a bit your fundraising strategy in small groups. And before I introduce you what we're going to do, don't forget that you can put your questions in the chat, and I will do my best to answer hopefully all of them at the end before we leave today, this evening. If not, we will follow up in emails as well. Okay, I'm going to introduce you now to the activities that we have planned for you. So now it's time for you to try out some of the tools for yourselves. Very shortly, we will take you into breakout rooms, and some of you will create a budget on a shoestring and practice, my favorite, the 3B rule using the digital red pen. Another group will develop a simple fundraising strategy using the sustainable income spectrum. There will be one facilitator in each breakout room with you, so you're not on your own, so don't worry. And I'm hoping to pop in and out too, so you might see appear me, or I might actually lead one. We will all use an imaginary example of organizing a digital event that provides family in distress with a fun time. Okay, so just think about that a little bit. And the facilitators will explain a little bit more when you arrive in your breakout rooms. The activities will last for about 20 minutes, and then we will all come back into the main Zoom room where the facilitators will summarize the breakout room sessions. In each breakout room, there will be a facilitator, as I said, but they will share a Google Jamboard with you. And some of you who have attended our webinars before will have used it before. The facilitators will share it in the breakout rooms in the chat function, and if you click on that link, then you can join in. If not, they will help. So don't worry if you're new to that. Don't run away, stay with us. It's good fun, and you'll explore another digital tool. Above all, we want you to assemble, to come together and share your experiences and have some fun. So I will now hand back to the assemble team, who will facilitate the activity in the breakout rooms. And after the activity and the sharing of experiences, I provide you with some more essential top tips, and there will be time for some questions. You can maybe then switch your videos back on. Obviously, you need your videos in the breakout sessions as well, but also afterwards, but also still put your questions in the chat and we will try to answer them. Okay, looking forward to seeing you in the breakout rooms. See you shortly.
It's always a good sign when people don't return until the very end of that 60 seconds. Okay, I think we're all back in the room. I'm going to suggest that we have feedback from Josie first, followed by Kia, and then move over to the other set of activities with Perrine and then Dan. I hope that works. And you each have about 5 minutes. So go ahead.
Brilliant. So yeah, in our group, we were looking at kind of dividing down the cost of a six-month period of events into different sort of funding streams. We're looking at donations, contracts, grants, sales, crowdfunding, loans, shares, all the juicy stuff. We kind of had a ballpark figure of about £15,000 to deliver those events. So it was a very juicy one again. For this particular thing, we were thinking about contracts potentially not being entirely appropriate for sort of the kind of families in distress. It's often more used for kind of goods and services, Magda was saying in our group. And there was also kind of some question marks around sales. In this particular instance, sales could be appropriate, although Magda was saying that sales as a kind of overall funding stream option, according to kind of the laws, can only account for about 10% of your charity income, which would be interesting. Is that kind of something, Corinna, that you're aware of, or that is true kind of an overall funding stream as opposed to an event funding stream? Oh, sorry, Corinna, you're on mute.
Sorry. An event obviously is a kind of a one-off, even if you have a series of events. So they're kind of considered by the funder as a project in itself. And funders are always keen to fund new projects, not projects that are ongoing, that you started off before and you're kind of revamping a little bit and you want funding to carry them on. So it's a good idea to come up with something quite innovative, quite new, when you kind of thinking about your projects, even about events. And obviously at the moment, the funders are aware that you all had to kind of dive in the cold waters of the digital world, and there is a bit more kind of help out there for you to get you digitally equipped. So look out for it, and I kind of mentioned some of organizations and programs who are out there to help you in the last workshop. So have a look at that again, but maybe we can share some more of that as well later on.
Brilliant. Thanks, Corinna. Otherwise, we were looking at kind of, splitting funding between donations, grants from granting organisations, sales, and then crowdfunding were kind of our main areas.
Cool, great mix. Important. Yeah.
And that was pretty much our group.
Excellent, thank you.
So in our session, we actually spent most of the time just talking about ourselves and our organisations and kind of what our personal kind of situations and strategies were at the moment. It was interesting. We had Sarah, who has spent quite a lot of time recently volunteering with her local mutual aid, mentioning how kind of, because there is no like funding for each mutual aid, you are doing everything on a shoestring, and I think it's just such a learning curve to have to do such vital work with absolutely no funding, and hopefully a really good learning opportunity, and something kind of she'll be able to take on to other work and do other community work kind of with the bare minimum, but still producing huge results. And also Tracy from Deaf Hub Wales, who are in the middle of a really, really major piece of work, fundraising to get to build a new building for the deaf community in Cardiff. And we're talking about the kind of different income streams, but also stuff like they've managed to get a bit of crowdfunding which has allowed them to get solar panels on the building, which in turn is going to bring down their operating costs. So Corinna, you were talking about that red pen and crossing out as much as you can. Part of that is also maybe just making those sums a little bit smaller if you can, by maybe getting solar panels or whatever. So yeah, it was really, really great discussion. And I hope everyone found it useful.
Yeah, that's really good entrepreneurial thinking, because obviously one way to fund is to increase your income. So if you can generate more income, you will need less funding. So that's really, really interesting. And I love the work on the shoestring. So, and it's true, it happens everywhere. Yeah, so very good work. Brilliant.
Hi. We were on a different type of activity. We were trying to do a shopping list for an event. Really good suggestion, actually. We had a dance competition, a crafting event, a dance competition with a cultural theme to it, and then a boat building competition. We went with the dance competition and added a cultural theme to it, and started with a shopping list that came up to over £2,000, which was good, but a dream. And while working for it, so we've had really expensive things like having a DJ, but with a massive fee, a dance teacher as well, creating an album out of it, and then costs such as the right for the songs that we were going to use, the platform itself, some prizes as well for the winners. Some of it were really luxuries, such as, you know, a dance teacher or a DJ fee, but we thought by working with students and then, you know, begging for this kind of services, asking for, you know, a dance teacher to come for free, we would be able to reduce the cost a lot, or working with regional groups as well. We actually managed to shrink down the budget to like a couple £100 by getting a lot of items for free, which was quite good.
Hey.
I think on the logistics, we're not quite there yet, but you know, it was a good start.
That's brilliant. That's really,
Can
really
I just
good
say
work.
something? Is that I think like a lot of arts professionals are really struggling at the moment. So I think if you're getting anything for free, it shouldn't be the dance teacher.
Sorry, let me just add, of course, that's a really good point. We also discussed the fee for the singers and then any participant to the songs, and then agreed that we will definitely pay a fee for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and we mustn't forget altogether that sustainability goes across all sectors, across all industries. So even when we're using this quite a lot, we need to be still fair and make sure that some money goes somewhere so that the kind of economy still keeps taking over. Okay. Good point. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks all. So, okay, in my group, a bit like in Keir's group, we spent a reasonable amount of time chatting about different people and their kind of goals and what they were doing, because that was really helpful in informing the exercise. And you had a whole range of experience and a whole range of different services, from, you know, veteran support to young people to food growing and so on. When we got into the activity, there was we kind of left it a bit late, but still there's some really good points. A bit like in the previous con, we were looking at maybe having a DJ, and we were really thinking about the higher costs that would be associated with that, because yes, it's possible you could get someone to volunteer their time, but again, all these points about the economy and people needing to be sustainable, that kind of came up very briefly. Then someone raised a really good point generally about the idea of kind of digital events for families, which is that not everyone is IT literate, not everyone has access to IT. So we kind of took a step backward and started thinking, well, for these projects to really be fully inclusive, what might we need to consider in terms of provision of equipment? So getting laptops out there or tablets or whatever. And that led on to another conversation about how, yes, this equipment can obviously be purchased at kind of normal prices, but when it comes to IT equipment, there there may be a number of different options, from, you know, companies that have kind of downsized and have some equipment to give away, from getting this equipment at auction, from looking at, you know, companies out there that are doing discounts with charities and community projects. So especially now, as we're in a world where digital events are so important to access people, and we need to really think about digital inclusion, it could be the top of our list of savings, if you like, is looking for the best way to access that equipment at fair and reasonable prices. Yeah, I think that those were the main takeaways from our group.
That's really interesting. Obviously, the tricky bit is that your beneficiaries have access to the equipment as well. So it's kind of, I guess, is looking at your budget as well, or at your the need for the equipment. How big is it, so that your beneficiaries, you know, whoever you want to reach digitally, can access the digital world as well. And that's obviously that's still a bit of a struggle, and that some of you might actually work to help, really.
Okay, I think we're done with that lovely feedback. It's great to hear that there were some rich conversations going on in those breakout rooms, and it's time to switch back to Corinna and your top tips on funding strategies. Just a reminder for everyone, please do put any questions you have around funding strategies, any other questions you might have for the funding doctor, into the chat, and we'll address them in the end of the session. So back over to you, Corinna.
And before I pull back out my slides, I was just wondering if we have a few minutes, Lorna, whether there's any Jamboards that we quickly can share so that we can see how they moved around, or did you not did you just use them as a means to discussions, or did you actually physically move stuff around on the Jamboard? Facilitators, any of you moved stuff around on the Jamboards?
Just a little bit, but it's not hugely different to where it started.
Okay. That's okay, that's okay. We wanted to try them out, and we wanted to give you all really the opportunity to kind of try to interact on them actively as well, because you can use them as a really good tool in your organizations to work together in a virtual way. So try them out, they're free. Google Jamboards. I'm not getting paid for this. Not from Google anyway. Okay. Maybe actually before I do my last little top tips, is there anything from you lovely community activist participants, any reflections very briefly on the breakout sessions? Nelly?
Yes, mine was regarding the difficulty that we have to raise some money for volunteer cost and staff cost. We can raise money for projects, but sometimes partners on the ground decide not to run projects because we just have money for activities.
Yeah.
That's it. And I see some projects, they manage to raise money for staff, for volunteers. So I don't know how they do it.
Do you put a proportion of your staffing and volunteering costs into your project costs?
Well, I'll try to do that 15% stuff. Maybe I'm approaching the wrong funders. They seem to have money only for activities.
Okay, or maybe you have to look at the pyramid a bit more into detail and see whether when you do your applications, you are too at the activity level and not enough at the outcome level for the funders.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay, then I will just switch off my video just for a minute and bring back my slides. Just 1 moment, please. Thank you.
sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
In terms of applying for funding, is there any particular business structure or organization that is more suitable?
Sorry, say that again.
If when you're applying for funding, do the funders favor any particular structure? So for instance, if it's a CIC, or if it's just like a basic non-profit organization, or if you're a sole trader, does that affect your applications when applying for funding?
Yes, some funders will fund charities, some funders will fund charities and social enterprises,
Okay.
some funders will fund private for-profit as well, so for startup, for example. So it really depends. You need to be aligned, or basically your legal structure need to be aligned with the funder's criteria.
Okay.
And that's one of the first things you should actually screen the criteria for if you're aligned. If you're not aligned, then don't go for the funder, because they won't bend the rules for you. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Right, I'm trying to share my screen here. 1 second. I was just concentrating on the question. Okay. Right. Can you see the slide again? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
The slides come back up.
Brilliant. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the breakout session, and I hope you've taken a few kind of experiences away from them. So I will just kind of summarize a tiny bit now, very, very briefly, to allow plenty of time for Q&As. So my prescription for raising funds successfully for your community projects is simple. Know what you want to achieve, your aims, and how your project fits in with the wider strategies. Don't be sidetracked or led by funding opportunities. Assess the needs and outcomes of your project that will provide you with the evidence that you need to apply for funding. Develop a sustainable funding mix strategy that will increase your chances of finding funding faster by leaving you less dependent on traditional sources of funding, which are currently subject to immense demand. Understand how you can improve your chances of being successful when asking for funding. This includes looking for ways of collaborating and getting the most out of networking. Have a good story, but show that you really mean business and that you know your facts and figures. So I hope some of you might have tried to get that out as well. Sorry, I'm showing here, even though you can't see, I'm showing you a calculator, which is really, really one of your other very important funding tools. Have a can-do attitude and be resilient. Come back from setbacks, and please, there will be setbacks all the time in fundraising, and that's absolutely normal. So don't take them personally. They just happen when you do fundraising, okay? They're totally normal when you're looking for funding. And then I would just like to say, now go on and do more good, because there's lots to be done. And I wish you all the best with this. And now I'm coming back into the room to answer questions that you may have, and maybe Lorna has already discovered some that happened in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really valuable time, actually, to be able to ask Corinna questions. So do put them into the chat or speak up if you're happy to do that, and we'll read them out. Corinna has lots of knowledge and expertise on this topic, and so really do try and make the most of this Q&A session. So we have a question from Magda, which is, what is the most viable funding mix that you'd recommend for a newly established startup charity?
Ooh, newly established startup charity. Cool. That's a tricky question without knowing your details.
All I'm going to say, I'm struggling with grant funding and trusts, because obviously very little evidence and outcomes and impact created. So at the moment, we're solely relying on donations and crowdfunding.
Thank you for helping me there now. That's very, very often the case with new charities, because if you're going for grant funding from trusts or foundations, they want to see that you can be trusted, that you have experience, that you have a team that is skilled, that you can really pull off the project. And basically the grant funder wants to see that the money they're going to give you is in secure hands and is really going to do the good that you're saying you're going to do. So a good way of doing that is to kind of build up that portfolio of experience, if you like, by doing small, very small pilot projects, if you like, and be very thorough in collecting your evidence in terms of outcome and impact. Okay, the outcomes are the positive changes that are happening because of this kind of pilot project, and the impact are going to more people over a longer period of time. So even if you do a short pilot, maybe go back to your kind of sample group and ask them in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, and maybe in a year's time, if there has still been any positive changes, and that will be your impact, and really collect a portfolio. And very often when you start up, it does take a while. But again, maybe, speak to bigger organizations who are doing similar things, who have already a track record. See if you can help them to deliver anything, which and maybe you can charge for that, or do it for free for first as a pilot, but maybe see if you can charge for them for that then, and that then brings an income in as well, which means that you need less funding. But a mix is obviously really important so that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. I hope that helps, Magda.
Do we have any other questions from the room? Would anyone like to shout out and share any queries that you have, either around funding strategies, funding streams, ways to access funding, whether you're a CIC, a social enterprise, a community group, a charity? It'd be really great to have any questions you might have, and do use this valuable time with Corinna to ask them.
Yeah, I have one, which is that do funders want to know why there should even be a new charity doing this?
Yes.
Yes. Because that's what I would ask. I'd be like, yes. Well, why aren't Safe for Children doing this? Why do you need a new charity?
Yeah,
but is
absolutely.
That the case? They do that. Yeah.
So you need to, when you set up a new charity, in reality, you're not just setting up a charity, you are really thinking through your business case, and you kind of need to look, even as a charity, at your competition. Who else is out there doing what you're doing? Because the funders will do that. Also, obviously, charities who have been there before the new charity might already have good established relationships with the funders. So the funders will question, why is there room? Is there more need for another charity? How is that new charity going to do anything differently? Is it going to be more innovative? Is it going to maybe target a slightly different segment of the population in terms of need? And that's where you really need to do your kind of market research, listen, know also what the other charities are doing. Because don't forget, the funders have only limited resources in terms of funding themselves. They cannot fund all of you. So you need to make it simple for the funder maybe that's again an incentive to collaborate, or a few new charities come together that are kind of really innovative, for example, or really have discovered an unmet need at local level and go and see a funder together, because obviously together you have more oomph, more impetus, you bring also wider skills, you can maybe reach more, and this is all kind of evidence for the funder that should hopefully swing into the maybe and funding pile instead of the we can't fund you, you have got you're the new kid on the block with no experience, so therefore we just can't justify to give you public money at the moment, because we'd rather give it to organizations that we know and that have demonstrated that they can distribute that funding and really make change on the ground.
I'd like to also add that it would be really great if you haven't already to look over Corinna's previous workshop with us, all about different funding streams available, where Corinna went in depth into the fact that although grants are a very popular form of funding stream, there are various others available that can be far more sustainable and effective across donations, contracts and sales. You can access the recording to that and the notes from that session in the link that I shared in the chat earlier on in this evening's workshop. So we have time for one, maybe two more questions. If anyone has anything burning to ask Corinna, or Corinna, do you have anything in particular that you would like to share?
What I would maybe just say, because maybe I sound a little bit doom and gloom right now by replying to Sarah, and let's say Sarah's face a little bit kind of like, oh my God.
No, that was exactly what I was expecting to hear, because that's exactly what I would ask as a funder.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, you know, big charities have got economies of scale, like, whereas a small charity, it's like you're paying another audit fee, you're paying an accountant, you're paying, you know, like a lady, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, earlier asked about how to cover your core costs, your salaries. So obviously in a bigger charity, they've got that nailed, haven't they? They can hide their core costs a lot more easily. They, you know, they have it all nailed. That's exactly what I would ask as a funder is why do you exist? Why have you set this up now? Why do you think you can do better than X, Y, Z? That's what I would say. That's what you'd get. That's the attitude you would get from from funding a small business.
Yes.
But
it's if you really look through the funder's eyes, and I think you raised a really, really valid point there, Sarah, and that I say that very often, you know, look through the funder glasses or put yourselves in the funder's shoes. If you were sitting on the funder's side, looking at your application or at your ask, you have to show and to prove to them that public money that they're going to give to you is really going to do the good that you're saying. And that means that you need to kind of be fit for funding, you need to have your house in order, you should ideally also be kind of incorporated somehow. And yeah, there is quite a few hoops to jump through if you want to go for grant funding or funding from trusts and foundations. Perhaps if that's not quite your cup of tea as an organization and you're thinking a little bit more creatively entrepreneurial, there's plenty of other funding streams that we kind of discussed in more detail in the last session out there that might allow you still to do good, or maybe, you know, a team up or find maybe a corporate that's happy to support you in putting on a project. But maybe not always think about setting up a charity just because you want to do good. Might be an idea as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that people think that because they want to do charitable things that they have to set up a charity.
Yeah, I think that's my issue.
The perfect example of that. It's like, it's not a charity. It's not an organisation. It doesn't have a bank account. It's not a limited company, but it does charitable things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that I'm having at the moment, because my company is literally we're just setting up.
Yeah.
So I see myself as doing charitable things, but I've been told that I don't have to set up as a charity as such. It could be, you know, there's other ways of generating income for the organisation without actually having a charity status.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, obviously, if I want to generate enough funds, then I would have to be set up as a charity.
Yeah, but I think, you know, the key here is not to set up an organization with the view to generate your revenue from grants and foundations. Okay, so exclude them right from the outset, because they limit you in what you can do. They're really competitive. They're really hard to get by. You need to jump through so many hoops. So maybe look at the other ones, and you will discover that they might bring out the real creative, the creative attitude in you as an organization to do good as well.
But also, can I just, sorry to interrupt again, like you can work as a contractor to big charities. So someone I know has a company and she does evaluation for international development, and it's called a storytelling company. So she does the case studies and they pay her. So she's not a charity, but everything she does is about charitable objectives. But she's a contractor, subcontractor.
And obviously social enterprise model. So, you know, look at the different legal structures as well. And surely if you want to generate income or attract some form of funding, you will need to choose a legal structure. And Lorna and I discussed whether to include that in the workshops. We just didn't have the time, but maybe we'll take a note and see if we can put anything on around that, because it's really important to think very thoroughly before setting up an organization, a business or a charity, if it's the right legal structure that you're choosing, because it might determine what kind of funding you can access or you can't access as well. But it's also about what's at the core of you, what you're good at. You know, are you creative, go up and do it and shake hands and yes, we do that? Or are you the form filler and looking for evidence? And it's just a completely different mindset that you need for grant funding, or if you just kind of try to negotiate a contract, because the language is completely different and your skills that you need as an organization is completely different.
This Assemble advice on the structures, and I didn't attend the first course, so I don't know if you included the legal structures in the first course.
We haven't yet done a session on legal structures, but it might be something we come to in the future. And we do have a number of different resources online in our news and resources section on our website that cover the kind of jargon around the different structures available. I'll also say, just to kind of wrap up on this point, that organisations like Assemble do run microfunding grants available to informal groups that might not have registered as a charity or as a CIC or any other kind of formal structure, and that as a community group, as an informal charitable grassroots organisation, you can access funding from organisations like Assemble. There are a variety of others, and I would encourage you to look at that resource that I shared higher up in the chat, to look at some of the other organisations that are available that do similar work, to really try to support the grassroots community groups and organisations that are doing such important work, really actioning solutions to problems in communities across the UK. And we do provide opportunities to access funding, and they are out there in grant form, but it's always a good idea to be creative with your funding strategy and to look at other available streams whether that is partnering up and becoming a delivery partner on a contract, or setting up sales and working on a social enterprise model. So lots to think about there, and we will definitely signpost to that particular resource in the email that we send over in the next week or so. It's been really great to get some interaction between the participants here this evening. We hear a lot from community groups that and community leaders that what they'd really relish is being able to connect with other people who are going through similar issues, and to recognise that we're all in this together and partnerships are possible, and sharing knowledge can be so useful. So thank you so much to those of you who have done that this evening. We will be sending out a recording of the session and a copy of the slides that Corinna has shared, as well as a roundup with some signposting to some further resources for you. We'll be sending that out in the next week or so. And I'm sad to say that this is the final session in the series that we've been holding with Corinna. You can access the previous funding workshops on our website in the news and resources section. And I'll just put this link, not to a private message, but to everyone in the session, to the news and resources section on the SEMBL website. I hope you find that useful. Do look out for future workshops hosted by SEMBL by signing up to our newsletter, and it's only left me to say a big thank you so much for everyone coming along this evening, wherever you are in the country. I hear there's a heat wave down in the south of England, so I hope you've all managed to keep cool through this. And thank you so much to Corinna for sharing your knowledge this evening. You can connect with Corinna on Twitter at The Funding Doctor, and with SEMBL at SEMBL UK. And I think we are all able now to turn off our microphones. So do switch on your microphones. Do switch on your microphone and just give a goodbye before we head off into the evening. And a huge thank you to Corinna for hosting today's session.
Thank you all. Thank you for the SEMBL team. Thank you, lovely people in the room, giving up your beautiful sunny evening. So,
It isn't sunny up north.
Bye.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Goodbye. Take care. Bye bye, everyone.